Hi, this is City Council Spotlight. I'm Sarah Fishman. We're here, or not here, with Matt McLaughlin, who is Ward 1 City Councilor and Council President. Hi, how are you?
Hey, doing all right, Sarah? How you doing?
Okay, so let's just start out with a little bio background. How long have you been on the City Council?
Let's see. I'm on my fourth term, so I'm almost to my seventh year. So I'll be doing at least 8 years by the time this term is done.
That sounds like prison term. Tell me doing.
Well, we've all been sheltering in place, so it kind of feels like that
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah. You've
The
been
tour
working
of duty,
hard.
as I like to say.
Yeah. So, and you're president now. How long have you been doing that?
So, president is elected every year. So this is my
Okay.
first year as president.
Okay. Okay. And uh, I was just poking around, trying to learn more about you. So forgive me. Luckily, I'm not very good on social media, so there's only so much I can find. But you're born and raised in Somerville. Are you the only native son, so to speak, on the city council?
No, there's still a few of us left, but I am in the minority of native-born Somerville residents. Myself, Councilor Clinging, Councilor White, Councilor Rossetti. I believe they're all born and raised in Somerville. But it is a rare
I didn't
breed these
know.
days.
Yeah. And you're fourth generation?
Yeah, I would say my great, maybe even further than that, because my great great grandparents on both sides came from Ireland to Massachusetts many years ago by way of Canada.
Mm.
So we've been living in Somerville or Cambridge for the past few generations. And yeah, so I would at least say that I'm fourth generation.
Wow. And you come from a large family. Is everyone in the area? Most people in the area?
Yeah, well, so I have a large immediate family that are all located in Somerville or close by. My brother Danny and Mark, they both live in Somerville still. My mother lives here, my grandmother. My sister lives in Everett, and another brother of mine, Steve, lives in Arlington now. But we're all very close physically and emotionally, and all try to do what we can to contribute to the community.
So, what has been the hardest part for you personally about in terms of dealing with COVID-19?
Well, that's tough. I mean, I think the hardest part is um, I don't know. It's I am looking at the position of city council as keeping the government open and trying to make sure people's basic needs are provided for, especially people who are vulnerable populations who are susceptible to COVID because they have to go to work and because there are many different factors that are really affecting low income people, especially. And I would say the most frustrating part is, not sometimes dealing with people who are thinking about themselves instead of the greater good of the population. So everybody
What do
wants,
you mean by?
well, everybody wants to open their stores. Everybody wants the schools to
Oh, I see.
open. Everybody wants to be able to walk down the street and enjoy themselves. And so, like, it's, at least in the beginning of this, I think it's calmed down, and I think people are getting accustomed to it. But I think a lot of people, this was probably the most difficult thing they ever dealt with in their lives. And
Mm.
there's people who have consistently had difficult problems over the years, and this has just made it worse. And I felt like,
Mm.
maybe there were some demands of government or of the city that, are secondary to the immediate needs. So dealing with people concerned about their own interests instead of the interests of the greater whole, that's been a little frustrating. But I would say
Mm.
it's been pretty positive as well, because for every person who's thinking of themselves, there are many people who are thinking of others as well and are thinking about how to help people who really need it right now.
So, has there been anyone in your immediate family or close friends that have really felt the pinch and you've had to do things that you wouldn't normally do as a city councilor, just as an individual? I mean, it just seems like a lot of people are doing whatever needs to be done kind of thing. You know, the liaisons from the different schools, passing out food, passing out diapers, passing out laptops, you know. Have you had to do anything like that or
Well, yeah, I've
handle
chosen to
different?
do those things. Myself, I've helped with the city council organize food drops for seniors with the city's support. And I've also, just dropped off supplies for people in general. But I enjoy doing that. That's the sort of thing I
Mhm.
enjoy doing. I have had friends, one of my friends' mother passed away from COVID. Of course, we know that we had a police officer in the city who was in a coma for quite a while due to COVID. Unfortunately, I believe he's recovering. It has had, and East Somerville in particular, had more COVID cases than anywhere else in the city for many of the reasons I was just telling you, that East Somerville is kind of still a more low-income neighborhood and dealing with a lot of these problems. So I haven't had to do anything extraordinary, I would say, other than the fact that we had to keep our government open and make sure people were taken care of. I think those are the basic things.
So how would you, I asked Kristen Strazo this when we interviewed her last, how would you rate the city's response to COVID? How
On a
well have you
scale, which
guys
scale are we
done?
talking?
Well, let's say 1 to 10, just for the sake of easiness.
I'll give it a 9, just because there's always room for improvement. And I would say that the mayor has taken this very seriously early on.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the city council, we're pretty much leading the way in the state in terms of, we didn't really miss much of a beat when meetings had to get canceled and we weren't able to meet each other in person. We had a brief period where we focused all our energies on COVID. And then after that, we were really able to function as a proper legislative body. So I'd give us a 9. I'd give the city a 9. I think, we're in a position where people are expecting to open schools or open businesses. And we're kind of going to our own drummer, for better or for worse. So that's provided some conflicts because the state is allowing things to open where the city wouldn't. And some of that's good, some of it's not so good to me.
So what part of, if you could elaborate a little, because I was going to ask you that, what is beneficial in going slower as the city has done in comparison to the state?
Well, we waited quite a while to open phase 3 when the rest of the state was in phase 3. So if you can go to Boston and see a movie right now, but you can't do that in Somerville. And I think that's, for better or for worse, that's a good thing in my mind. I would love to go to the movies, but if they told me I could go to the movies, I wouldn't go right now, and I would discourage people from doing so. So I think that, like, the phase 3, slowly rolling out phase 3 was kind of the biggest difference. And then I think we've been a lot more serious in terms of restaurants opening and what can open and what can't open. So we're being very cautious, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, if we're the only city doing it, then, we don't live in, like, the COVID does not know city boundaries. So, when the state's saying one thing and we're saying another thing, sometimes there's confusion and frustration from the public.
Yeah, I go into a grocery store and I don't know what bags to use, as a very
Yeah.
minor example.
Well, when we first started, they said you couldn't use paper bags anymore, and we have a plastic bag ban. So the state said, you have to use plastic bags, and now that's changing again. So all sorts of little changes that, throwing people through a loop through their regular course of business.
I think it's really hard when so many pieces of one's routine are disrupted. This is just so all encompassing. And I have some new neighbors and they built a fence and it changes how people walk around the street and everything. And it's just a small thing, but it's something that this whole street has been doing. And the neighbor even said, I know this is a disruption upon a disruption kind of thing. But anyway, so what have you had any small business owners or other people come to you about the economic impact of the slower reopening? Do you know? I think I just read about a couple of restaurants in East Somerville that closed. I could be.
Yeah, I have had them, and I'll have to make some phone calls after this as well, because there are businesses who are concerned not just about the impact of COVID, but waiting for other permits and things that normally would have happened much faster were not for COVID. I am happy that a lot of the businesses on Broadway are still successful, because they were able to do takeout and carry out and keep up their business. There have been, the one that stands out most to me is American Fresh Brewery, Slum Brew. They were already going through financial troubles before, and now they're closing. So that's a business that we've lost permanently. And there are other businesses that are on the verge of, they may not be around. And that's a sad truth throughout America right now.
Is it affecting East Somerville more than West Somerville, or is it about the same across the city?
I don't think it's a boundary issue. I think it's more of, the status of the business and whether they're capable. Like, there's some restaurants, like one of my favorite spots is Rincon, and they seem to be able to weather the tide because they did takeout and carry out. But then there's other restaurants like La Braza that are mostly a dine-in restaurant, and people aren't dining in right now. And then there's places like the Mount Vernon that do dine-in, but they also opened up and did outdoor seating. So it's a really mixed bag. I don't think it has to do with the ward. It has more to do with the status of the business. Like, I know Dark Horse Tavern is, places like this that are indoor locations and aren't really good for outdoor seating. And now we're going to go into the fall. They don't provide, they don't do takeout or carry out. I think that's the big difference. And then, of course, there's businesses like Legoland and the movie theater that just can't open at all right now. And I'm sure that's frustrating for them. But it is.
I have one friend who's a chef at a restaurant, and she said that it was just too expensive to build the outdoor seating, and especially if it was only going to accommodate people a couple more months, and then it was going to be too cold. So they've focused on revamping the indoor seating, separating, all that stuff.
Yeah, a few people made that decision that outdoor seating was just not worth it for them. And I understand their frustration on that.
Okay, so has anyone said anything to you specifically about the schools, about remote education, remote learning being the sole?
Yeah, as council president, I sit on the school committee. We've had many discussions. I'm a part of all those discussions about school reopening. We had a public hearing that, there were a lot of parents there who wanted their kids to go back to school. There were a lot of teachers that did not want to return to in-class learning. Currently, right now, we are pursuing the remote option with the hopes of maybe opening in the future. So that's where we're at right now. And I do think ultimately that's the right decision because as much as everybody would love to return to school, I think the teachers and the students and the parents would all like to get back to normal. But that's just a decision that was made and one that I agree with for the safety of the public.
So are some teachers teaching from their classrooms, or the teachers as well teaching remotely from their homes?
I believe they're teaching remotely. That's a good question, though.
Because I thought at one point there was some talk of at least some teachers teaching from their classrooms, and that didn't really make sense because it was the same old building with the same poor ventilation that you were protecting the children from. So, as an example.
Yeah, I've heard that from other teachers in other cities that they're teaching from school. I don't know the answer to that. I do kind of feel like, the benefit of remote teaching is you can do it anywhere. So we definitely want to take precautions to protect the teachers as well. And fortunately, they're well represented with their union, and they get to be a part of those conversations.
Yeah. All right. So let's switch a little bit of our focus here. Oh, I wanted to ask you first about funding for COVID. There was this big federal act, CARES Act, and the money went from the feds to the state to the cities, and Somerville got a fair amount of money for things like extending unemployment and that sort of thing. And then there was also, I just learned about $1 million in actual city money for displaced workers. So I guess the main question is, does the city have enough to continue to sustain helping people the way they have been for, I don't know how many months, short-term, long-term?
I mean, I would say short answer is no. I don't think anyone in this country has enough money to deal with this because that money will dry up. Yeah. And unfortunately, the federal government, they're in the middle of what I guess they called it the skinny bailout, which does not bode well for us. I know, for example, we've given out many small business grants to keep them afloat, and probably about 3/4 of the people did not get grants because there just was not enough money to go around. And then the money that we spend as a city, we were very fortunate this year to be in a pretty good financial situation. But a lot of the impacts of COVID are going to be felt in next year's budget. So the loss of revenue from all the businesses, from property values, things like this are going to impact us negatively, and we could definitely use more support from the state and federal government.
So did you hear about this thing I just read about that there was going to be a safe injection site somewhere in Somerville, and now that's not being done for some reason because of COVID-19?
I haven't heard that.
Who's already hired, but
I haven't heard that latest update, but I am aware of the efforts to have a safe injection site. It's something Councilor Klingon and I have supported. And I could understand why during COVID we might not be doing that, but I would expect, I know they're meeting practically every week, so I would expect something like that to happen in the future, but it's understandable that it would be delayed or not happen during the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Have you got a flu shot yet, Matt?
When's the last time I got a flu shot? It had to be a few months ago, and I've been tested for COVID 3 times at this point. I have a 4th test coming.
Oh my goodness. Why do you have so many tests? Is it for your work?
Just opportunity, really. The first time I did it just to have it done, and the second time I did it because I went out of state and came back and wanted to make sure that I was good. Right. And then a third time I'm going to be probably for the same reason. So I have the opportunity, and I also encourage everybody to get tested whenever they can. I think that's very important.
My son who goes to Northeastern over the summer was doing Meals on Wheels. So he got tested a couple of times because he wanted to make sure that he didn't have anything that he could give to some of the seniors that he was delivering meals to. So there are a lot of reasons, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same reason for wearing a mask. I was going to say, it's the same reason for wearing a mask. It's the same reason for wearing a mask, is a lot of it isn't for your own safety and health, right. It's for the health and safety of others.
It's for others. Right. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about police reform. I don't even know how to start with this because there are so many different parts to it. I guess, what do you think needs to be done to make policing more effective, to address some of the social justice concerns, to address George Floyd and those murders? What is there anything that's either very obvious or easy in terms of implementing policy that can be done?
Well, I'd say it is a very difficult question, and a lot of the answers are on the state and federal level. That needs true systemic change and just a way that we address policing in general. I'll focus on the local level and say that a lot of the changes that people are demanding right now have already been implemented by the city a long time ago. So we've been looking at this issue for a while. Well, I'd say, for example, people are saying that they want to replace police with social workers, and we actually have social workers who work in the police department to deal with substance abuse issues, to deal with mental health issues, things like this. And then we've also had, what else has been done in the past? I think we've done a really good job with outreach in general. And I'll tell you, when I first got on the city council, policing issues were one of the most important issues to me because of how I grew up. I grew up, during a period of a lot of gang issues, MS-13, Winter Hill Gang was in the background, a lot of kids getting in trouble, going down the wrong road, and saw a very aggressive response to those. And a lot of people who were innocent or maybe weren't completely bad people and just did the wrong thing occasionally got caught up in this. So that was something that I wanted to see change, particularly around substance abuse and the war on drugs. So one of the first things I did when I got into office was I requested, at these Resistat meetings, they're always talking about crime stats. And I always kept asking, where are the drug crime stats and how are the arrests? Like, how do you handle arrests? And they wanted to provide me that information. And I said, it's not about me having the information. It's about the public, because I want them to be aware of the problem and how it's being addressed. And just from asking those basic questions, we developed the police had a policy of, prioritizing treatment over incarceration and trying to get people help so that they don't get caught up in the prison system. So that's just a soft example of what we've done. And then currently we're pursuing a civilian review committee that the city council has taken the lead on, so that, any issues with police would be addressed by an independent civilian review commission. Just last week, we repealed the anti-gang ordinance, which was on Somerville's books, which we felt was very unconstitutional and racist. It was a policy meant to target Latino youth during the height of the MS-13 issues in the 2000s. And that was something that I saw as a young person and said that this is something I disagree with. And when this all came up, I said, this is the time to get rid of this. So we've been doing a lot, and I think the mayor has done a lot as well in trying to get police officers who fit the right mold, who are interested in addressing community issues as opposed to being, the hard person who's going to lock people up and that's their job and that's it. We have taken a more social work stance on issues. And what was the last point I wanted to make? I'm blanking on the last point, but I do think, and then the city council, through our confirmation of appointments committee, have really taken seriously police appointments and all appointments in general. I'd say before the new group of councilors got on, this confirmation of appointments was really just a rubber stamp. People were approved without much consideration. And since then, people have, they really have, it's not good enough that they checked all the boxes and then go to the city council. So we've actually rejected appointments for police in the past because we didn't feel like it met the standard of the community. And that's like...
That's a new thing that hasn't been done commonly in the recent past?
I've had a lawyer tell us that almost every other city in the Commonwealth is just a rubber stamp when it comes to appointments. And as of 2014, that has not been the case in the city of Somerville. We've taken the appointments very seriously. We want to read the background checks. We want to see what their records are, their involvement in the community. And we've approved a lot of promotions and appointments, but we also have rejected some. And I think that's a very basic thing that we can do that we've taken very seriously, that you probably have a hard time finding other cities in the Commonwealth doing the same.
So this committee, this speaks to that. The committee have people been chosen yet to be on the civilian oversight committee, or has it started yet, so to speak? Or
right now we're discussing it in legislative matters. We're investigating how other cities have dealt with civilian review, and we're working with the mayor's office on that. So understandably, we're still dealing with COVID, and we're still dealing with a lot of other issues. So Councilor Davis and Councilor Scott are two people that have really taken a lead on that. And yeah, it's moving along, but yeah, we haven't gotten to the point of appointing people. We need to figure out what it's going to look like before we start picking people for the committee.
We don't have very much time left, but the accountability issue is what seems to come up for a lot of people. You know, how does one respond to a police officer who hasn't, you know, behaved appropriately, who's engaged in violent behavior, who what have you? Because, I mean, will this committee be addressing accountability issues, or will it be more advisory or something in between?
Oh, I think that all has to be worked out, but in my mind, it would be an accountability group. It would be someone that actually has authority to address these issues and not just make a recommendation. And I also do want to say, you know, the city council's taken this seriously. I think the mayor has taken it seriously over time as well. Because I know that there have been police who have been fired just because they weren't good at their jobs, which is kind of a novel concept. You know, there have been people.
When was this?
I don't want to name individuals, but
was this recently?
This is over since I've been in office. Yeah, over the past 7 years, I know that there have been people who have been let go, not because they did something terribly wrong or they committed civil rights violations, but just because they weren't good. They didn't fit the mold. And, you know, some people are upset about that, but I do think that is, once again, something you don't see in other cities, people getting let go because they're not good at their jobs. And I think that's a big problem. You look at some of these cases, I'm blanking on the name, but, you know, in Cincinnati, there was an issue like this where a police officer killed a black man, and they found out later that this guy was denied a job elsewhere because of similar issues. So I don't think that's something that would happen in Somerville. And if it did, there are many paths to addressing it.
All right. Well, on that hopeful note, we need to stop. This has been City Council Spotlight with Matt McLaughlin. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
All right. Thank you for having me.